Hi everyone, my name is Mike Gates, and today we're going to explore Microsoft Fabric. We're going to learn how to create our first Lakehouse. Once we have the Lakehouse created, we're going to import a CSV file. From that CSV file, we're going to turn that into a table, preview the data, and once we preview the data, we're going to go to the SQL endpoint and we are going to run a SQL query on it. From there, we're going to run a SQL visual query, which is super awesome. We got to see this. And once we have done that, we're going to create our first Power BI report using the data right there from the Lakehouse. So let's go over to the computer and learn how to do this. Here we are at the computer, and I have created a workspace called Demo. If you'd like to learn how to create a workspace, let me know, and I will make a video on that. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a Lakehouse. And what I like to do is I like to get into the data engineering persona, and that allows me to see all the tools that I need to start with. But there are several personas in there. When you first open up, you will see that it's usually on Power BI. But if you go into data engineering, it will show you a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see what it looks like when you first log in. And this is always changing as they're updating Microsoft Fabric. So right now they've moved the Welcome to Fabric up at the top. It used to be down here further in the middle. And it's got some tutorials on how to do things. Here's a medallion structure. We'll go over the medallion structure, basic data analytics, and all of that. But what we are going to do is we're going to be looking at this side over here, where you have your Lakehouse, your notebook, your environment, Spark job, data pipeline, API, and you can import a notebook, which is really good if you've already got notebooks created. You don't have to recreate the wheel, so to speak. You can just import those and make the changes you need to your sources and your sinks. So we're going to create the Lakehouse today. We'll just click on Lakehouse and let's name it. Let's call it Lakehouse 2. I've already got Lakehouse 1, so let's call it Lakehouse 2. Now let's see if Lakehouse 1 will work. We're not going to have the schemas. The schemas show schemas like a database does, like the DBO dot and then your file name. We're not going to do that. We're just going to create a straight up one, normal Lakehouse. So when you hit create, it takes a little while, and as quick as that, we have our Lakehouse created. It's got the tables. Right now, it is running some software on these tables section to create SQL endpoints, and pretty soon we'll see a little notification pop up that the SQL endpoint has been created. Now there it is right there. This now has a SQL endpoint, so once you load things into your table section, you will be able to query that with a SQL code. Now it's read only, you can't write back to it, but it's really helpful, and I'll demonstrate that to you here in a little while. Now the Lakehouse has two sections to it. It's got the table section, and right now this is totally empty, and it has a file section. The table section is managed tables, so the data is managed and the metadata is managed on that. So if you have something in the tables and you delete it, it's gone. If you have something that's in the files section, the files is managing the metadata. And this is your Lakehouse section. You have your structured and unstructured data in the file section. In the table section, you can only have your structured data. And it has to follow SQL rules. So there can't be spaces in the name of the tables or in the name of the columns. There can't be any special characters in the name of the columns. So there's certain rules to that. So as you look at the main page, you can see upload files. Start with simple data. It automatically imports tables filled with sample data, which is really good to start messing around with. You can create a shortcut, which is really good if you're working in another data. You have the shortcuts you can create. You don't have to move everything over. And then there is Data Flow Gen 2. If you're familiar with the Power BI data flows, it's similar to that, but it is a lot more powerful. It's got a beefed up engine, and you're able to save the tables, which is really good. And then there's new data pipeline, which we'll go over at some point. I'll make a video on how to do a pipeline. But what we're going to do is we're going to upload a data to the files. Now I've already downloaded some sample sales files. So I'm going to go to these three dots, click them, go to upload, click that, and I'm going to upload a file. and it'll take you to the upload window, and you can hit your browse. And I am going to go, I have it in my downloads, so I'm going to click on that. So you can see it previews it on the side, so you can see what it is. This is a CSV file for sales, and I'm going to open, and then you see the name there. I always hit overwrite if the file already exists. That's just safe. Make sure that I've got the data I'm expecting and I'm not appending any data by accident. So I'm going to hit upload. As you can see, it's running. It just takes a little bit of time. 3 megabytes worth of data. We're set. Close this window, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better. There you go. I'm going to click on the files, and you'll see there it is. Now if I click on that, we'll be able to preview it. So you can see where that stuff is, which is really good. And that is how you upload a file. Now we have our data lake set and ready to go. We've got information into it. Now if I go over here and I click that, I can load it into the tables. And that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise, you can go ahead and click on the properties section, and this gives a URL. So if you want to load this directly into Power BI or something, you would copy the URL and you would go to the Data Lake Gen 2 set for the get data, and then you would paste this in there, and this is the address to it, and then you would load it and it would load right in, because this is built on a Data Lake Gen 2. If you were going to actually query it like in a notebook or something, you would call this is the ABFS path with it, which is the Azure Blob File Storage path. So that's where your file is located, and then you can pull the data up and work with it that way as well. But what we're going to do is we are going to load it into a table. We'll click New Table. And now remember, it has to follow the rules. Now this will be simple because it's sales. We're just going to do that. It is comma separated, and we are going to use headers for the column names. So then we're just going to hit load. I changed it to the capital S so you could see what's going to happen here in a second. So we're going to take a few seconds as that is loading. It won't take long at all to move that into the tables. And you'll see right there, even though I changed it to capital S, it'll bring it in as a lowercase s for the name of the table. Okay. Now this is a managed table, and you can see that little triangle? That's not an error. It's a table that's built on Delta Parquet format, which now we're just calling Delta, but they're Parquet files that you're able to append, you're able to change things in them and make changes to it. Unlike a normal file where you have to overwrite everything, you can actually go in and make a change to that. So that's what that Delta is. Now we're just calling them Delta files. So if we click on these 3 dots, you've got a few things you can do. You can rename, you can delete, you can view files, properties, maintenances. And if I just click on it, we have the files right here. We have all the stuff that's inside that file in a database storage. So that's the first part of the Lakehouse, and that is really cool. Now let me show you the real powerful part of the Lakehouse. If we go right up here into the upper right, you'll see where it says Lakehouse right next to that share button. We'll click on that, and now you'll see that SQL Analytics endpoint that we saw earlier as it was building when we first uploading that data, and then it flashed, and when we first started building the Lakehouse, and it flashed and said it was creating a SQL endpoint. We're going to click on that. So every time you build a Lakehouse, Fabric will run programming over it, Spark programming over it, and what it will do is it will create a endpoint for you, and it'll create a data warehouse. Basically, it will create a database with the managed tables. That's why they have to follow the database rules for the naming conventions and everything. So now right here, you can see the schemas have changed. We are now over here. If you can see that, that is different than the Lakehouse. Lakehouse has a little water next to it in the house, like a lake house. Now this is a data warehouse. So we're in the data warehouse now. And you can see the schema is the DBO, and the sales is right here. And then you have all of the numbers all the columns with all your numbers and everything in it, and it inferred the schema on it. So it has, CSV is string only when it comes in. So it looked at it and it changed the schemas as it thought it should be as far as what the numbers are. Right now it looks all really good, which is very good. So now let's run a query. Let's run a SQL query on it. What I'm going to do is click these 3 dots over here, new SQL query, and we're going to select the top 100. So let's move this, let's go out a little bit. There you go. We're going to move this down, and here is the SQL code. So we're selecting the top 100 from all the column names in here, and we're going to go ahead and run it. It already ran it as it was in there, and then you see there it is. There's your results. So now in your flat files, the CSV file that we've uploaded, we have now created a table with it in the Lakehouse, a managed table, and we have also gone into the SQL and ran a query on it. Let's do the visual query, which is a super powerful part of it. If you click on new visual query, what you want to do is grab your table and you want to drag it, and you're going to see something very cool. I'm going to close out the old query. We're going to discard the changes. And now you're going to see something that looks very familiar if you're with Power BI. It looks very much like a Power Query, but it's the visual side of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Manage Columns, and we're going to choose our columns. And we are going to select all. We're going to choose our sales order number, our sales order line number. And then we're going to go to the transform menu right here, and we're going to group by, okay? And we are going to, the sales order number is what we're going to look for. And the new column name is going to be line items. We're not going to name it count. Call it line. Well, we can put spaces in this one. No, let's not. All right, and what's the operation we're going to do? Well, since we want the line items, we want the distinct, okay? So let's see what we can find here. We want the count of the distinct values, because we want to know how many separate ones there are. And the column is going to be the sales order line number. Yep, and that's right. We're going to hit OK. You see it added up here, it added the steps. So first it had the source, the database, and then the table. When we drop that in, those are the 3 that automatically created. And then it's got the choose columns, and then we grouped it. So now here you see how many line items, distinct line items you have for each one of these sales orders. And then at the bottom of the page down here, it's got the data section, the query which we're in. So here's the data, which we saw earlier. You can look at that. You look in the query. That's the visual query we're working with right now. And then on over here, it has the model tab. Now the model section, we're going to close this properties one so you can see a little more. You see it's got some stuff running in the background. That's just that data stuff. But here you see our sales right there. That's the one we're just working with right here. In the model ribbon, we can go up here and we can click new report. We highlighted the sales. We clicked on it. We're going to click new report. And we're going to continue. It asks us, it says you want to do it with the sales. We're going to say yes. It's waiting, it's thinking. But you have your sales data right here. So that's really good. And what we're going to do is we are going to just do a table. We'll drop a table in there. Let's close this filters pane. Get a little closer for you so you can see what's going on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in the items, and then we're also going to do the quantity. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see in there. So now we've got the items and the quantity in here. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this to let's change this to a bar, because that's there we go. That's a lot better to read than just the table. You can see the relations with each other. And then we're just going to go ahead under File, and we'll hit Save. And then we're going to save enter the report name here, and we're going to put sales report, sales demo. We're just going to call it sales demo. We're going to hit save. And boom, just like that, we've gone through and got the demo worksite. You see there's the Power BI right there. We created our Lakehouse that has the SQL endpoints, which is our data warehouse. That's what that looks like right here. And each one has its own semantic models for Power BIs if you want to build off that. But we created our own right there with the sales demo. We've created the Lakehouse, we've uploaded a file, we've moved it to tables, we've queried it with SQL, we've done a visual query, and then we've loaded that to a Power BI report. If you have any ideas what you'd like to see, let me know and I'd be more than happy to make a video on it. Thanks. I'll see you later. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful at all, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And in the comments, let me know if there's something you'd like to see, a video you'd like me to create showing you how to do something in Microsoft Fabric. Until then, I will see you next time.